Welcome to Dial It In, a podcast where we talk with fascinating people about marketing, sales, process improvements, and tricks that they use to grow their businesses. Join me, Dave Meyer, and Trygve Olsen of BusyWeb as we bring you interviews on how the best in their fields are dialing it in for their organizations. Let's ring up another episode. We're recapping all of our summer favorites on our summer series at Dial It In, and today we have staff picks. So Nicole on our team actually picked Steve Anderson today, and he covers the Amazon way, that everything that you learned from Amazon or that he learned from recapping Amazon's board meetings over the years. A few of the special quotes that she pulled from this episode: return on risk is thinking about risk taking the same way you think about return on investment. You'll never be able to grow like Amazon if you're not willing to risk failure. And most organizations punish failure. Successful failure recognizes that while something might not work the way you think, the key is learning why that didn't work and what you can change to make adjustments for the next experiment. She highlighted straight talk on risk and failure, and Steve reframed the failure as something that businesses should expect and learn from, not avoid, bringing clarity to a topic many leaders still tiptoe around. And Nicole's actionable takeaways were that Steve gave real examples and clear frameworks like successful failure and return on risk that businesses can start using right away. Enjoy this episode of Dial It In, and we'll see you next week.
I don't get it. We're supposed to be recording now. Do you know where Dave is?
Well, I don't know. I thought he left a note on your desk. I don't know if he's here, but I think he'll be back shortly.
That's what that is. All right, hold on. Seems kind of odd. He wrote me a full letter.
Well, maybe he wants to say.
Dear Trygve, hi, it's me, Dave. I'm going to be a little late today, but I wanted you to be prepared for our podcast guest today. His name is Steve Anderson. He is a leading expert on growth, business risk, and innovation. He has authored a new book called The Bezos Letters, 14 Principles to Grow Your Business Like Amazon, a Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and international bestseller. He has deconstructed Jeff Bezos' 21 shareholder letters to reveal the strategies behind. That's probably why Dave wrote me the letter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It is the strategies behind Amazon's success. With decades of experience in strategic risk management, Steve has been recognized as one of LinkedIn's top global thought leaders. Today, he helps businesses of all sizes apply Amazon's growth principles to scale, innovate, and thrive. I'll be there in a minute. Please say hi and add to cart our guest today, Steve Anderson. Hi, Steve.
Hello. Great to be.
Nice to.
Ooh. Hey, everybody. I'm back. I'm here.
Welcome back, Dave.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to meet you, Steve.
I got
Trygve,
your
you
letter.
got my note.
Thank you for the letter.
Perfect.
Perfect. You know, the art of letter writing is really just a lost art.
Okay, here's the question. Was it cursive or was it printed?
It was typed.
Very good.
Dave.
So Dave's handwriting's not great, right?
Actually, you know what? For a guy, Dave really does have nice handwriting. I have terrible handwriting.
It's my handwriting's at least legible, but I wouldn't call it pretty.
There you go.
Well,
yes, that's true.
Yes.
That's true. Well, Steve, I'm super glad to meet you. The book is absolutely fascinating, and I can't wait to get into it. But before we do that, Dave, do we have a sponsor for today's episode?
We do, Trygve. Is your HubSpot portal cluttered and inefficient? We Fix HubSpot, powered by BusyWeb, specializes in customizing and optimizing your HubSpot experience. Our team of certified experts offers tailored solutions, including training, re-onboarding, architecture reviews, and data restructuring, ensuring your portal aligns perfectly with your business needs. Don't let a disorganized system slow you down. Visit wefixhubspot.com to schedule your complimentary consultation and start transforming your HubSpot portal today.
Cool. Well, thank you, Dave. So,
yeah.
Steve, your book is called the Bezos Letters, 14 Principles to Grow Your Business Like Amazon. And you started writing this based on Jeff's, I'm going to call him Jeff because he doesn't return my calls, Jeff's shareholder letters. I think this is a fascinating process, and I want to get into some of the lessons learned, but What on earth possessed you to come up with the idea to do a deep dive on shareholder letters?
It was a little bit of a roundabout journey. So my career background is in the insurance industry, specifically with insurance agents and brokers, helping them with their technology. And I've been doing that a long time. And we know technology continues to develop rapidly, more rapidly than ever, it feels like. And every year feels like more rapidly than ever. But I started asking a question a number of years ago, is the biggest risk that they face actually not taking enough risk? Which is pretty counterintuitive because, as you know, the insurance industry is all about reducing risk, mitigating risk, transferring risk to an insurance policy, not taking more risk. But with technology, and because it's developing so rapidly, you can't sit around and wait to see what's going to happen. And we certainly are experiencing a lot of that now around generative AI and agentic tools and all the stuff. If you're not getting in and experimenting, then you're going to be behind. And so I started talking about that and then started researching companies that had once been very successful and are no longer here, literally bankrupt, gone, out of business, sold. And also then companies that have been successful and seem to have some ability to continue to be successful. Well, I think we know a lot of the names around the ones that aren't here, so I won't belabor that point. But I came across Amazon. I kind of say now makes sense, but at the time it was, okay, how does Amazon do it? I came across the shareholder letters, which typically CEO shareholder letters are boring.
Totally.
Touting the company, they're, puff pieces, typically. Mm-hmm. You've read them, I've read them.
Yeah.
And so
I've written one before.
Oh, yeah. So what was it? Was it boring?
I used to be on the board of directors of an arts foundation here in Minnesota. And so I had to write the letter of summarizing the last year. And so I found it really difficult to try and synthesize all the good things that were happening down to like 2 paragraphs. And I felt like I had just sort of skimmed the surface. It was actually a challenging writing project.
Mm-hmm. Very. I got a hold of the Amazon. And I had read a couple over the years, so I kind of knew they were there. But I ended up getting every letter that he wrote up to that point, which was 1997 through 2018. He subsequently finished 19 and 20, but the book covers 97 to 18. And what I realized when I sat down and read them as a narrative, one right after the other as a book, almost a 50,000 word book at that point, I realized there were threads going through the letters, that the letters certainly did say, here's, our sales, here's how it increased. I mean, it did do that. But in addition, it talked about how he did it. And that's what really intrigued me, those different threads that went through. And a lot of them were consistent from the very beginning, first letter, all the way through to the last letter. And so that's what intrigued me. And my first, I call it iteration, my first thought was to do an executive summary of each of the letters, because there's a lot of good stuff there. So it was, here are kind of some milestones they hit this year. Here's some key takeaways that you might be able to think about as a business owner, and some quotes. 1 page for each letter. Lead gen, created it, download it, give me your address. Here's some good stuff, to help you. And there. Fortunately, my wife is in the book publishing business and has been for many years. So yes, I did get a sweetheart deal for a publisher. Okay, so we get that question out. And when I sent it to her kind of to proofread, what do you think? And, because she's really good at editing and that kind of stuff. And she wrote back and said, this isn't a lead gen, this is a book. And I had been talking about writing a book. So then I went, I don't know how to write a book. I know how to write articles, right? 1,000 word, 1,500 words. The book ended up being a little over 65,000 words. And it's a very different animal in terms of strategy. How do you pull the reader through the book and get them to want to go and read the next chapter? So that's a whole but that was the impetus. And there were a whole lot of bumps in that process of actually getting the book published.
I imagine there's a little bit of, as you were going through the letters, Steve, that there's a little bit of historian that you had to kick in, right? To add context and here's what was happening. And the read comes through like a story of the life of Amazon, as well as all the business lessons that you get. So how did you find the historical context behind those letters?
So one of the things I do and have done pretty well is research. And so it was literally every interview I could get my hands on, even some like really old ones that were kind of hard to, but I'm pretty good at that. So I transcribed them, listened to them. And I have to tell you, my wife and I did this together. Her name's on the book for a reason. The reason it reads well is because of her. My ideas, her strategy. My first draft, which in the business is called the shitty first draft, because every first draft is bad, was still chronological. 1997, he said this. 1998, you said that. And
Sure.
I would still remember coming home, kind of finally sent it to her, some trepidation. What's she going to think? I can't, blah, blah, blah. But I came home and she said, we need to talk. Now, as a husband, that's generally not a good phrase.
Right. It happens all the time to me.
Yeah.
So we sat down and she said, thank you for sending this. There's a lot of great information in it, but nobody cares when he said what. So we talked through it and she said, it's boring. Can you come up with principles? And I was pretty afraid.
See, this is what I'm getting back to the sweet deal from your wife. I mean, I think that sounds horrible. Like, well, hey, read my galleys. Well, hey, why don't you empty the dishwasher?
And at that time I said, I don't know. But literally a few days later, I had 8. And then we ended up expanding it to the 14 that ended up in the book. But that's part of why, again, I said earlier, right? What's the strategy for getting the reader to want to continue, not jump at some point? And that was brilliant on her part. And that's why she's so good at what she does. So.
And that's clear in the lessons that you put forth. So I guess my next question is what are your favorite lessons inside of the principles, and what can we learn?
So there are 14. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
And I think I pick out a few, because I always get asked, kind of what's your favorite, or what do you think's the most impactful, and part of what's really interesting, because they're 14, we broke them down into 4 cycles. We call it test, build, accelerate, and scale. And I believe businesses, large and small, are going through those cycles continually. Maybe a department's testing something new, a region's doing something, but they're scaling, et cetera, et cetera. So that was one way to help people grasp more the principles. And I didn't realize this at the time, but I've realized it in talking to a lot of people about these. The principles stand on their own and they interact with one another. So I would say the first principle I think is unique to Amazon, and one of the major reasons they continue to be successful is the very first one in the test cycle, which is encourage successful failure. Now, typically, you don't see those 2 words together. So that's intriguing. And I think it's for Amazon, very practical. Bezos said in a couple of the early letters that Amazon is the best place for an employee to fail, because they don't punish failure. They encourage failure. So here's the process. In order to invent on behalf of the customer, that's a Bezos phrase, we invent on behalf of the customer, you have to experiment. And what he said was, an experiment, you don't know if it's going to succeed or not. So your failure rate is pretty high with experimenting. So experimentation leads to invention, which allows innovation. So I think the current business thing right now of companies have to innovate, I agree, but they're missing the first two steps. They've got to experiment and invent before they can innovate. And it really goes back to Clay Christensen's kind of groundbreaking book on, I just lost the title, Innovator's Dilemma, right? You can innovate your way out of business. Because when you're innovating what's already there, you're not looking at what new you need to create. So that whole concept of encouraging experimentation and recognizing that failure is a part of the process, and you don't punish employees for that. That's not a normal business culture today. And I say in the book, I believe employees are not afraid of failure, but are afraid of the consequences of failure. I mean, think about my career being derailed because of this thing didn't work, this product, whatever. And Amazon, if you look at their history, and they still do it today, they kill a lot of projects. They try things. I mean, and Amazon now is at a scale where they can, spend money. But even a small business, and I always want to remind people when we talk about Amazon, Jeff Bezos started in a garage on his hands and knees, putting a book in a package and driving it to the post office. Yes, they scaled, and they started like every other business.
Well, I think historically what's been so interesting about Amazon is the ever-evolving nature of a simple question of what is Amazon? And I think if you ask people who have the hair color that we have, they would say that it was a book delivery business that then grew into other things. But if you ask other people who are like under the age of 35, what is Amazon? They don't think of it that way. They think of it as a delivery service for everything under the sun.
Probably easier, faster, and quicker.
Yeah. And now we are of the age, and I had this experience with my wife's mother the other day where her traditional method of shopping was to go to all sorts of stores. She had an idea of what she wanted. She'd go to all these different stores and then look at it and feel it and figure out if she wanted to buy it, and then figure out if she wanted to have a coupon or not. And she'd go to 3 more stores because she felt like it would get it. She'd waste, $30 worth of gas in order to get the one thing she wanted. But the other interesting thing about Amazon is I think not only have they changed the nature of what their business is, I think they've by and large changed the nature of what is shopping. Because now if I need something, I pick up my phone and bink, I order it, and then it's either here, it's here 2 hours to 2 days later.
Exactly. Well, and I think the thing to keep in mind too is Bezos started with a vision bigger than books. Books were just a starting point, because what he said was, what he looked for, he had a list of like 20 different types of products that he thought could be sold on the internet. Now remember, this is like 1994. Internet was brand new. In fact, it's really similar to today around, AI is nothing, it's not going to do anything, and, blah, blah, blah. Well, is it the same? We'll see. I don't know yet. I tend to think it is. But he started with books because every book's exactly the same. There's no differentiation. And online, he could have an unlimited inventory, whereas the largest bookstores at the time maxed out at 150 to 175,000 titles. And so if you had an obscure title, and even in the beginning, if you wanted a out of print book, they would go search for it for you and you could buy it.
Mm-hmm.
But they very quickly went to video. They went to other product lines because, again, as they were building, and I think, again, part of Bezos' genius, I will say that word, is he also saw that the internet was the Wild Wild West. So there was advantage for first movers. And he realized pretty quickly that logistics, getting the book, product, whatever it is, to the consumer as fast as possible would give them a moat against other retailers. I mean, to the point, let me give you an example. Again, think of early internet, your early experiences with going online. Your big fear, my big fear, was putting my credit card information in a website.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Amazon was the first to create and popularize one-click shopping. The first to store delivery, where do we send it? How do you pay for it? And literally that button where you were on a product page, you could click it and it was ordered. So it was so unique that they got a patent on the one-click shopping. And that patent just expired a few years ago. And so early on, Barnes & Noble, for example, tried to copy the one-click patent. Amazon sued and won. Apple licensed the one-click product
Really?
on their website.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's
Isn't that
fascinating.
fascinating?
Yeah.
And again, Bezos was very intentional about protecting IP and what they were doing. Now, and then we go to other, so Amazon's this big thing, right? Most people experience through the shopping and delivery, where you have AWS. Whole new
Which
business,
is completely different.
completely
Yeah.
different. And it grew out of Amazon's needs. They were growing so fast that all their different departments were creating the same thing over and over again. They all had to create a database. They all had to create the, web, whatever, all of the stuff to make all that work.
By the way, for those who are wondering what AWS is, it's Amazon Web Services. So it's cloud storage. It's
and
all sorts of
Amazon
stuff.
had a 7-year lead before other Google, Microsoft, others caught to this idea. But they built it for Amazon, and somebody realized, hey, there got to be developers out there like us that want compute but don't want all the expensive infrastructure. So that's where it grew out of. Whole different business.
They're actually, anyone listening to this podcast right now, I'm almost certain that you're getting it off of an Amazon server because AWS publishes most of the podcasts. So
one of my favorite Amazon books before this one was a book called 21 Dog Years, which was a guy who worked at Amazon in customer service. And it's sort of a satirical look at things. And one of the things that he looked at was that one of the things that was really big in the early 90s was a company called Pets.com, where you could get pet supply. And Steve's laughing because I'm sure he's going to know the story. But one of their big things, and Pets.com also was really innovative in that they sold subscription models to things. But one of the things that was really big for them was kitty litter, that you can click a button and you can subscribe and you can get kitty litter, which is great. So the idea is perfect, right? You don't have to go to the store and buy it. But Dave, I know you're allergic to cats. So if anybody who's not allergic to cats understands, kitty litter typically comes in about a 30-pound box and is essentially dirt. So at the end of the day, one of the big galactic failures of Pets.com was they were trying to ship you giant boxes of dirt. So along those same lines, and because it was laid out in your book so much more eloquently, Steve, what are some of and you talk about failing forward and successing in failure. What are some of the key principles that Amazon was able to leverage in order to get to the success points that they're at, and how other businesses can look at them?
What comes to mind, maybe an overall idea with Bezos specifically, he's really counterintuitive. He doesn't do what other businesses do. And a couple examples come immediately to mind. Crime. All right. So free shipping. 2 days or less. Again, as you said, maybe an hour, it's gotten better. But at the time, Bezos said, we're going to do free shipping, but they experimented. They had what they called super saver shipping, which was buy $25 and then the shipping's free. But here's the point. The biggest friction for shopping online, especially early on, is you went to the checkout and all of a sudden there was this big number for shipping. And then it became easier just to go to the store. So they worked to try and reduce that. The team at Amazon, especially the financial team, thought he was crazy. We can't afford to do this. Kind of back to your point of shipping dirt. We can't afford to do this. And what he said, and he would say this over and over again, he said, if it's better for the customer, it will eventually be better for Amazon and for our shareholders. And so that's the core reason why they built out such a massive and efficient logistics system. The number may be off a little bit. For what I remember is last year, 2024, Amazon shipped 95% of their packages through their own network. Not UPS, not FedEx, not the Postal Service. They still do some of that, but not a lot, because they have spent billions and billions of dollars building out this infrastructure. Here's another example of thinking differently. Amazon Marketplace. Third-party sellers. Again, this was early 2000s. What CEO in their right mind opens up their web property, their website, selling everything they have available to their competitors? That's what Marketplace is.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Again, what Bezos said was, if a third-party seller has a better price than we can get, it's better for the customer. If a third-party seller has it in stock and we don't, it's better for the customer. And those third-party sellers pay a fee to Amazon to access their warehousing and their logistics network to deliver packages so they don't have to build it. Again, crazy idea and brilliant.
Yeah.
So counterintuitive, I guess, is, and it feels like over and over and over again, you see examples of really delving into why, whereas most businesses, well, we can't do that. But why? Yeah.
And I think this is something that we experience at BusyWeb all the time with when people come to us and say, well, we want to sell through the internet. Well, the problem is the Amazon standard is what it is right now, which is you have 4 clicks to buy.
Yeah.
Somebody has to come to your website to be able to find your product, evaluate it, and then they need to buy, and they need to do that in 4 clicks or less, which if you're building something from nothing is very expensive to do and very hard to do. And one of the things that Steve mentioned earlier that I don't think people have a really innate understanding of is the most dangerous and risky thing that Amazon ever did was hosting credit card information.
I should at that time.
Yeah, especially at that time. But now, even now, there's a galactic liability concern for companies to do that. And so credit card processors now offer that service of, well, we'll store the information for you. But what happens then is it makes the website slower, because if we at BusyWeb build you a really nice e-commerce site, at the end of the day, when we get to that one-click buying, the website essentially calls the credit card company, gets your credit card number, and then pings the website back to say, okay, go ahead and buy it, which then in effect makes the website slower, but it reduces the risk. So getting back to the 14 lessons, Steve, Dave asked you what your favorite is. What are some of the ways that businesses can learn from the Bezos letters and figure out their own risk management tolerances when it comes to this kind of stuff? I had like a 3-minute question.
I'm going to point to another principle called obsess over customers. And I always have been intrigued. So by that phrase, right, or that word in particular, obsess, the very first the letter he wrote was 1997, and there were 3 big sections in it. One of those sections was the whole letter sets the stage for literally the next few decades. Here's what Amazon will do. One of those is we will obsess over customers. Now, every business knows they need to take care of customers. They need to have good customer service. They need to have a customer journey that reduces friction. But obsess is a different way to think of it. And I don't think most businesses obsess over customers. And the way I look at it is friction. And do you even know, as a business owner, where your customers have friction in your process?
I want to stop you right there, Steve, because I think this is an incredibly important idea of friction in the buying process that we need to before you continue to answer, I think people don't understand what that means. I do, but I know Dave, you do too.
Your example just a few minutes ago of third-party payment system, you got to send information back and forth. That takes time, and it might be milliseconds, it might be longer, depending on what's happening and the bandwidth of the buyer. And right, there are all kind of factors there. So that's potentially a friction point. Or a friction point, I'll use a non-e-commerce example. At the doctor's office, what's a friction point? Going in for an appointment and getting handed the clipboard with the paper and a pen.
Yeah.
Right. Filling out the exact same information every time. Not like I'm seeing more and more now, either an app or a website portal. You go in and can fill out the paperwork electronically before you go to the appointment. So then you're just checking in.
Of course.
Or the doctor saying, well, what are we doing here today?
Right. All the way back.
Don't you know?
Look at me. I've got snot coming out my nose or whatever.
And
but
even,
if you have,
even the doctor's notes now show up. So you get a notice of their notes. Now, I have to say, that's kind of where I might use ChatGPT to go, okay, interpret these for me into English. But still, I get the information with less friction than ever. And so in your business, though, if you're listening, do you even know? And the only way to know is get out of the building and have somebody else who doesn't know your business go through the process and take notes or record it. Find out where they stop. Find out, because you're not going to know internally because you know the way it's supposed to work. Or you'll make excuses. Well, we can't really fix that, or we haven't, blah, blah, whatever it is. But if that's a friction point, that's not obsessing over customers. And Amazon has been fanatical in this area. And that's one of the reasons why they continue to be successful.
I think one of the things that, if we're talking about obsession over customers, it's really about the buying experience. Because we talked about, hey, there's 4 clicks to buy. So that's why it's so much easier to buy from Amazon than just about anywhere. I think a good lesson that a lot of businesses can learn is there needs to be a healthy balance between your processes and your customer's ability to buy. If it is considerably hard to say yes, and this is even something I think, Dave, you and I struggle with, is you need to make the opportunity to say yes be as easy and the road to there as easy as possible.
I'm thinking we were at friend's house last night for dinner, and simple conversation, but it just illustrates this point. One of the people there was saying, they've been looking for the rock sea salt so you can put it in a grinder like pepper. Couldn't find it. And I just made the off comment of, did you check Amazon? Huh. No. And you probably have, and part of the problem, you might have more selection than, you want to be able to make a decision, but still it's that idea of it's always available. And again, I don't want this principle to be only an e-commerce website. I think however you are dealing with your customer, physically in person, whatever it is, it's that the principle's still there. And I think that's frankly what's so powerful about the principles that they apply in a lot of different situations.
Do you think there could ever be another Amazon?
It would be really hard for somebody else to come in because Amazon has built such a strong moat around your business. Now, could there be another like Amazon in something else? Absolutely.
Right. Another disruptor that might
industry,
change
another
everything.
process, another.
Yeah.
But I think the e-commerce and cloud computing, and again, you look at AWS, we talked about before. I mean, Microsoft has come in with Azure, Google's come in, a few others. Amazon still has a lead in terms of market share, but others are trying to compete with Amazon in that arena.
Yeah, it feels like some of the AI things might be a good lead in or something that would change the world significantly enough that it would be similar to Amazon, like OpenAI and ChatGPT really opened the floodgates of interacting with software and information in a completely different way.
That's a good example.
I think the big lesson from Amazon, and especially what we've been talking about so far, Steve, is if we apply the concept of flywheels, right? So gaining more things. I actually remember a graphic where they were talking about Amazon's flywheel and how they reduce prices, reduce friction, and then increase scale. And that leads to a bigger moat around what people can get into. Well, flywheels can apply to your business just the same. Figure out ways to connect with your audience better, easier, and reduce that friction, and things get easier.
One of my principles is understand your flywheel. And the background for Amazon is before Jim Collins' good book, Good to Great, was published, just a few months before, he was invited by Bezos to an off-site senior leadership team meeting, and for a day, and the entire day was spent building Amazon's flywheel. And you're right, if you've seen the graph, they called it the virtuous cycle. You see the graph. It's it's there. It was on a napkin. They prettied it up a little bit, and it really was okay. We've already talked about these elements. If we have low prices, if it's easy to do business, that brings more people and Amazon relied on word of mouth more than anything. They did very little advertising early on. They're doing more now, but that brings more people. More people allows them to negotiate better pricing for the manufacturers of the products they sell, which again brings in more people. And then they added the third-party sellers kind of in that cycle to even accelerate that further. And that flywheel's still turning. So yes, totally agree. And I do think that principle, I think the flywheel is the hardest to understand and the hardest to implement. Because you need to get it right. If one piece of that flywheel breaks or is off, then the flywheel has problems.
Right. Each supply part.
Yeah.
Of course.
And the other challenge that I think a lot of businesses have is that they don't appreciate the idea that every part of the business is customer facing. In delivery, in sales, in marketing, even in accounting. If there are hitches in the giddy up, people are gone and they're just going to go somewhere else to find other business. Steve, I know you're also a consultant, and I think customer obsession is a really important thing to consider. So what are some other examples in your life that you've seen beyond Amazon that obsessing over the customer turns into real world?
The one that comes to mind, and I don't know, Banana Ball? Savannah Bananas? Are you familiar with it?
Love Bananas, the Savannah Bananas. Yeah.
That to me is one of the best examples of customer obsession. Now, Jesse Cole calls it fans first. But I have to think how many years, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, pretty early on after the book was published, I got, actually it's right here because I have it, a personal handwritten thank you note from Jesse Cole, yellow,
Amazing.
and also a personal video he shot in the Savannah Stadium, thanking me for the book. And, and you look at in fact, I just was watching yesterday kind of what he calls Banana Ball 3.0, right? Kind of their progression as they were experimenting with crazy stuff. And his whole goal was, how do we make baseball more fun for the fans? And, I've been to a show, and that's what he calls it, right? It's a show. The point actually, he had nothing to do with this, but my wife and I, because you can tell we're a bit older, we've been married a long time. We actually were asked if we wanted to come out in the field for a kiss-off. And so we participated in the show. It was so fun. That is to me, a great example of continuing to push, continuing to do crazy things, understanding some will work and some won't. So what works, we do more of. What doesn't work, we get rid of and adapt quickly and easily. So yeah, that's I think Jesse is definitely a great example of how you work that out in a whole different business.
And for the listeners who aren't familiar with the Savannah Bananas, it's a gross understatement to call them the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball. But
it's probably the easiest connection people can make, I think. Yes.
Yeah. And I think, the other interesting thing is that along those same lines is we have a team based here in Minnesota that was built on a lot of those principles, and it was run by Mike Veck for a long time. There's a minor league baseball team called the St. Paul Saints. And Mike had identified that the team is basically the team is a bunch of kids, and it's not that interesting. And what is interesting is the experience of going to the game. And so they instituted all sorts of weird things, all sorts of fun traditions, this kind of thing. And the place that you used to go to the game, it was a dump, and it was a terrible stadium, but it was a joy to be there, and it was our dump. And one of the things that always happened was the entirety of left field was an active train track. Mm. And so no matter what point in the game, if a train came by, and it came by probably 20 or 30 times in the game, the entire stadium would shout, "Train!" And even the announcers would be like, "Train." And 10 years ago, the Saints moved to downtown St. Paul. They have a gorgeous stadium that is incredibly green, and the whole thing just feels corporate, and it's not nearly as much fun as it used to be. And I don't think I've gone nearly as much as I used to, because there was this wonderful joy of, yes, it's a dump, but it's our dump, and it's fun, and it's a
and we love it, right?
Do you want to go to a nice dinner party, or do you want to go party at the Animal House? The Animal House, yeah, because everybody's having a blast all the time. So I think the book is great. I think it's an important lesson on risk. It's an important lesson on change management, and how scary it is to be constantly reinventing yourself. So I think everybody needs to go out and find it. Steve, ironically, is your book available on Amazon?
Yes, it is actually. And actually there are all versions, I guess. So Kindle, audio, and physical are all available there. And, when I say, I say international bestseller, but it's been translated into 20 languages.
20 languages? Holy guacamole.
Yeah, so it's resonated, actually surprising to me, right? I didn't set out to do all of this. I just had an idea that seems to resonate with people. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
It's the same customer obsession, I think, because you're focusing on what people really want to know, instead of, a dry history lesson on Amazon. You came up with 14 points that are essential for any business to grow and thrive.
Exactly. Dave, anything classy and inspirational as we wind up?
Yeah, we talked a lot about retail in our conversation thus far, but I think the important thing for a lot of our clients, which tend to be more B2B, to understand is that this does apply to them, and to get into your customers' heads and to think about what that friction is that's just stopping them on their conversation or not delighting them. Or if you're getting stuck in, well, we've always done it this way, you need to be okay with disrupting yourself and refocusing on your customer. to thrive in today's world. And so, Steve, thank you for this lesson in this book. It's been
My
fascinating.
pleasure. It's been a great conversation. Thank you both.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you to Nicole and Andy of the podcast, the producers here at Dial It In. Thank you, Dave. And much like Tony Kornheiser, with apologies to the man himself, we will try to do better the next time.